Hey everyone, welcome to Bizarro World. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, it's Alan Schindler back home here in our studios in Boca Raton, Florida. And we've got a great Techstrong Gang for you this lovely Wednesday. We've got two of our gang members out in Vegas. It seems like they went right from Salt Lake City to Vegas. And good for them. They're out there 2 weeks before I'll be there. But let's welcome our Vegas contingent right away. First of all, he bats left, throws righty, hits with power to all fields. He's our Chief Content Officer, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well, surviving the big road trip.
Yes, yes, you are. You did go right from Salt Lake to Las Vegas.
I did, man. I stopped by Zion National Park, man. It's a good place. Good time. Highly recommend it.
Absolutely. Let's enjoy our national parks while we have them.
Oh, boy.
And let's get kicking things right off. Let's move over to our next Las Vegas. Not resident, but visitor in Vegas.
Almost trip.
He's
kind of a semi-resident.
A couple more days, you're going to have to pay taxes there. Oh, wait, they don't have taxes there, do they?
I just have to leave the state every 6 days, and then I'll be okay.
All right. Future VP, Techstrong CTO, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, how are you?
Good to be here. Right? And notice, Mike and I have the same curtains. We are in different rooms. Trust me, you're not even close to anywhere near each other.
Listen, the government may care, but we don't care what you guys do in your own private time.
That's two.
That's two.
Thump.
Zingers.
Now let's move over to San Angelo, Texas, for our editor of Techstrong AI, Techstrong ITSM, and so many more things here at Techstrong, our own Amanda Razzani. Amanda, you need to be on more so I get more practice with it, is the problem.
It's like lasagna. It's lasagna.
There you go.
Mitch, I love when you do that Italian accent. Could you do a little more for that
it's
for us?
It's all my years in New York.
In New York.
To be a party here in New York.
Amanda, welcome. It's great to have you on. And then lurking a little bit in the shadows today, we got to get him a light. But he likes it that way.
Light.
After all, he pulls the strings in the background. He is the czar of Silicon Valley. Our own editor, of John Swartz. Hey, John, how are you?
Hi. Hey, Alan. Hey, we're getting ready. We're battening down the hatches. We're going to have an atmospheric river the next several days. A bomb cycle, as they call it. Yes, where it just pours.
So this is becoming an every year thing for you guys.
Pretty much. Yeah. Usually around this time of year. And we're going to get soaked. I look forward to it.
I'm sure the West could use it, right?
Yeah, I look forward to it. I love rain. We need it.
Yeah. And it packs some snowpack up in the mountains, and then that melts, and Phoenix, while it burns up, at least they'll have some water. But after all, there is no climate change. What are we worried about?
Everything's fine.
It's all good.
Everything's hunky-dory. Yeah.
All right. On that pleasant note, let's jump right in, guys, gang, into our topics for today. Mike, do you want to take the first one?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. But the new administration under President-elect Trump has nominated, I think it's Brendan Carr. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
He's the nominee to run the FCC, and everybody's trying to read the tea leaves because on the one hand, he's kind of anti-big tech, and on the other hand, he seems to be good friends with Elon Musk. So, John, what's your read on what's going on here?
So remember when it was obvious to the tech leaders that Trump was going to be elected? It seemed that they had some inside information. Maybe they were talking to Elon Musk. I don't know. That's just speculation. But they all sidled up to Trump, all the major big tech leaders. I think now they might have a little bit of buyer's remorse, just a tad, because if Brendan Clark, when he becomes the chair of the FCC, he has a pretty ambitious list, and it's all pretty much anti-tech. He wants to investigate and regulate big tech. He wants to ban TikTok and expand this so-called cover list, which are communications equipment and services the FCC believes pose a national security risk. He wants to revise Section 230, which is a big
He
boogeyman.
doesn't want to
for
revise it.
tech.
He wants to revoke it.
He wants to kill it, right? So he wants to go through Congress. They basically want to lift the protections that platforms like Meta and Google have that legally protect them from third-party content. He wants to roll back net neutrality rules. He wants to force big tech to pay for rural broadband expansion. And one of the things that he and other conservatives have fixated on was this belief that they're being censored by content moderators at Facebook and Twitter. That was before
And X
Musk
and
bought,
Twitter.
yeah, it's before Musk bought Twitter.
Before it became the
And changed
cesspool
it
it
to
is.
X. Yeah. Yes. So here's the interesting thing, and the thing that I think will get Alan's blood boiling beyond its high point already. What Carr wants to do, he wants to grant billions of dollars in federal subsidies to Starlink, which is Musk's satellite internet service, as well as its competitor, Amazon's Kuiper, to ensure American companies control the future of space-based internet, which kind of opens a whole can of worms. So, in other words, big tech, look over your shoulder or look in front of you, look to your sides. You're going to get hit from every conceivable angle unless you're Starlink or X. And I'll just leave
John,
that
I think
hanging
you
in
left
the air.
out one important thing he wants to do. Two things I think you got to mention when we talk about Brendan Carr. First of all, he's in favor of pulling licenses of TV and
that was my
radio
last point.
stations who don't kowtow and toe the government line, just like
Okay, so
any
yes.
good dictatorship should.
Okay, so here I was saving I buried the lead. I was saving that for last. But yes, there were three instances that Trump objected to: the 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris, the ABC debates, when she was eviscerated, and NBC Saturday Night Live, or SNL, in which Harris appeared. Carr, in all those instances, agrees with Trump that these are violations of one sort or the other, especially SNL, which they say is a violation of the equal time rule. So yes, you're right. That one is probably the most jarring, and that's why you're going to see the networks probably react in a certain way. And you probably have already seen one sign of it with MSNBC and their morning show going down to visit and Trump to kiss the ring. That's lingering above all else. That affects more people than any other decision if they decide to go down that path. I'm not saying they will, but they're definitely threatening. That's the one thing, is a difference between a threat and actual action. So just
Well,
throwing this
John,
out
you
there.
left one other thing out.
Oh no, what's that? What's that?
President-elect Mr. I don't agree with Project 2025. I don't even know what's in there. Happened to nominate the guy who wrote the Project
Yes.
2025 FCC piece into
Yeah,
it.
so everything that I mentioned is contained in the chapter on the FCC in Project 2025, which was written by Brendan Carr.
Brendan Carr.
Okay.
That's the punchline. Now, let me give you the real punchline, though. You ready for this, Mitch?
Yeah, I've been waiting all day.
All right. So during the President Biden administration, the Supreme Court has made no secret, has made multiple rulings that these agencies and commissions, such as the FDC, the FAA, the FCC, cannot exceed their authority specifically granted by Congress, and that for most of the regulations and promulgation of rules that they want to do, they must go back and get congressional action to enforce this. If we see the courts, the Supreme Court, go back on that, because now you've got a different party in power in the White House, I'm telling you, fold your cards, pack your stuff, and get the heck out of here. Get out of Dodge. Right? Because that would be the ultimate hypocrisy. That would be the ultimate tipping point of you no longer have an independent judiciary, let alone a competent executive branch and a whatever you want to call our dysfunctional legislative branch. And that spells real trouble for the America that we all love.
Do you think there's enough votes in the GOP that might cross over to...
Are you kidding me? Are you
Just-
kidding me? You gonna say that with a straight face?
Hey, I'm glad you said that, Mike, because I was going to suggest it too. So I'm glad you're taking the bullet on this one.
You think there's enough votes in the GOP to stand up to this? Is that what you're saying?
We'll see, man. It only takes 3 or 4, I think.
That's true.
I'll
Yeah, so a lot of
believe
these
it when
things,
I
a lot of
see
these
it.
things require congressional.
I
I'm sorry,
don't
Mitch.
think it's gonna
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just, given, we're already in the age of Trump calling all the senators that are balking about Gates, Matt Gates being the head of the
Attorney General.
Attorney General. Thank you.
Why? What's the matter with paying for sex with young girls?
We all have our vices. Not cool. No, he's already trying to influence senators. It's the
There's liable to be a
loyalty
fire
test.
in the Reichstag.
And where have we seen loyalty tests? People fail those. No, they stand up to it, or they're quiet. They're in action, or they don't. They get behind it. So why would that change? They're in power now. They're one. So I think it's going to be more support, not less, for what he's trying to do.
If these recess appointments take place, then all bets are off, including the FCC and their necessity to have congressional approval. I just see guardrails being stripped left and right.
Wow.
And I think it applies to the FCC as much as anywhere else, perhaps. Hope I'm wrong.
Absolutely. FCC chairman has a lot of power, has a lot of flexibility to do, and they bring in their own philosophy and belief about things. And Wheeler did when he was in, and his belief about broadband or not, and what should be publicly funded, what's privately funded. So it's not a new phenomena that someone, especially in FCC, comes in and there's some real direction changes. Here we just have some things that are very much aligned with
Beyond the pale.
not just beyond the cabinet, the party, the whole Project 2025 thing.
Well,
So-
wait, maybe there's a way we could vaccinate ourselves against this. Oh, wait, no, vaccinations are out now too.
But,
inoculate.
hey, you know what? Can I? The one thing that doesn't make sense to me. So they always get mixed signals about their
One
reaction.
thing doesn't make sense to you.
I'm just
only
trying to
one
make-
thing
okay.
doesn't make sense to you.
Just one thing.
We live in a bizarre world, and one thing doesn't make sense to you.
That's why he's the czar, Alan. He's the czar.
Wait. No, what I'm talking about, I should have rephrased that. But something in particular doesn't make sense to me is that this attitude they have towards big tech. I don't quite understand it, because on one hand, they want no form of regulation. They want to deregulate everything. Yet they also want to get rid of the FTC chair, Lena Khan, right? Who's going after big tech. So they have a punitive approach through Carr, yet they're getting rid of the FTC chair, who is for some sort of punitive measures against big tech. And in fact, actually, I think Mike sent me something earlier today, or I may have seen it somewhere, where Google is considering splitting off part of their business because they lost to the Department of Justice. So I'm not really sure what's going on. And remember, back in 2019, it was the Justice Department, and of course, it was probably a much different Justice Department under Trump, that started all these investigations into big tech. So, this whole relationship is weird.
Let me clarify the Google thing, because it's a Bloomberg report saying the DOJ is going to ask Google to get rid of their browser from the rest of their business to satisfy that judgment.
Oh, well, I'm looking at it. Yeah, I'm looking at
Probability
it
that the DOJ is going to do that under Trump is zero.
Let me explain the real politic of this. Big tech will buy their way. I mean, unfortunately, we live in a world where conflicts of interest and separation and money influence in government is a thing of the past. And if money can buy your way out of it, big tech will buy its way out of it, right or wrong.
It's kind of an oligarchy.
Nice platitudes. This is classic oligarchy. This is how oligarchies
really is.
work.
And in a sense, what I don't really understand is this whole national movement, or at least half a national movement or a third of the national movement, against authority and things like big tech, when in fact they're going to enrich themselves. They're going to be more powerful than ever, in my estimation. Musk is going, as long as he's on Trump's good side, and God knows how long that's going to last. I'm giving it a couple
Right,
months.
they're both stable geniuses.
Yeah.
Well, big tech isn't a monolith, right? It's who's in favor in big tech, right? And who's supporting the political party in power. In this case, there's a much clearer alignment of, Musk and Trump and the other, and Amazon, Bezos, right? He clearly, made his move.
I think Cook's in line too. I mean, he's always been on.
Okay.
He's been pretty adroit at handling Trump.
I mean, and that's the big tech that lines up will be supported and the others won't.
Guys,
right?
let's be clear here. They'll say nice things about the man, and he loves that. They'll put some money, spread some money around like you would in any third world banana republic. And all will be well. Don't cry for Argentina or big tech. Right? Because Argentina may be in better shape than us in some
So
level,
this is going to be like watching the Kremlin to see who's on the podium next to
that's
the government, right?
That's exactly what it's an oligarchy.
And can I break a fourth wall here? Let's be really clear about this
Go
too.
for it.
So what's interesting is Tom Siebel, who's a billionaire out here, Siebel ran Siebel Systems, and now he's running an AI company. I've interviewed him many, many times. He's only a couple miles away from here. And I had asked him specifically about Trump, and he told me how crazy he is and how he's irresponsible, and how Siebel had worked, it helped the Obama administration or the Biden administration, both of them. And yet he is one of the biggest fundraisers for Trump. When Trump came out here a few months ago, it was Siebel who actually hosted the event. And don't judge me, but when I was at Austin a couple months ago, I fell into an interview with RFK Jr. where I talked to this guy for half an hour. And I asked him specifically about his grievances with Biden and Trump. And he told me they were both equally terrible people. So what the personal beliefs versus the public stature, stance, persona, they all just get in line. I mean, but their personal beliefs really almost mean nothing in the big picture. It's all about accumulation of power and access to power and profitability. So
Exactly what it is.
America.
Look, America.
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 You know what? Let's take a break. I'm sick. You're watching Techstrong Gang. We'll be back with something a little more uplifting about how AI is taking your jobs, maybe.
Hey, man,
You're
get what
watching
you vote for, right?
You're watching Techstrong Gang.
All right, folks, we're back and we're going to talk about something a little less contentious, artificial intelligence. There's a new report out from IESE Business School talking about how it looks like maybe AI is creating a demand for more managers. And the issue is, of course, that we are starting to see some of the maybe lower level jobs in organizations be automated by AI, but maybe everybody's about to become a manager. Alan, how do you think this is going to play out as we go forward? Is everybody going to be their own boss of a slew of AI agents?
Well, that's an interesting concept. I'm a manager because I manage AI agents, not people. And that makes me a manager. Let's think about that. Is that really what a manager is? When we talk about more AI means more managers,
managing technology managers.
But in terms of jobs, generally managers manage people, not technology, not AI agents. Are we raising AI agents to pseudo 3/5 of a person? Makes sense in this political climate anyway. But, is that what we're talking about? But before we even jump into that, I want to just give a quick shout out. For those of you out there, you probably know us from DevOps.com. Cloud Native now, Security Boulevard here on Techstrong TV. We have some other great sites and we put some great content out on there. Techstrong.ai is one of them. We launched this probably 8, 9, maybe more months ago now. And if you're interested in AI, as we all are, there's some great content out on AI on Techstrong.ai. TechstrongITSM.com is also a great site if you're interested in the ITSM space. Digital CXO, if you're, talk about leadership and managers interested in digital transformation. And of course, our newest one that we launched last week out in QCOM, platformengineering.com. We got the domain. It's going to be a lot of good stuff happening there. Stay tuned to it. So please, if you want to stay on top, or kidding aside and politics and all that, these are great sites to stay on top of these things. Both of the articles we're going to talk about in this segment are up on Techstrong.ai. But to your point, that's not the manager I'm looking for, right? I mean, that's, I'm managing myself and my digital twins of myself. And so I don't know necessarily if I would say AI means more managers. Is AI beginning to take jobs? Absolutely. Is AI creating more jobs than it's taking? I think absolutely. And I think that will be the norm for the next 3 to 5 years, at least.
Go ahead.
I think that, that was the fear originally. It's going to take jobs, but, that's progress. But definitely, it's just rerouting those jobs. It's just creating a whole lot of new jobs and giving people opportunity to skill up in a new area.
I think everybody may become possibly their own little entrepreneurial companies. And instead of being an employee, we'll all be contractors to each other. And there's even a bet on among the VCs out there, there may someday be a company who has $1 billion valuation that only has one employee because they're just doing everything with agents. And John, I know you've heard that out in the Valley.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept because I was thinking one of the phrases that keeps coming up when I talk to folks is the concept of the super agents. So we have agentic AI, but you'd have like teams of AI agents run by a super agent, like a traffic cop, which is also an agent, and then that agent may report to the human in a weird way. So the hierarchy would be one person, as you said, Mike, running perhaps a multi-billion-dollar company, even billion-dollar company, with a bunch of and it's funny. That's kind of what in a roundabout way, Benioff and Jensen were talking about at Dreamforce. They're talking about deploying billions of workers who do all these tasks. And, the one thing that scares me though is you have a company worth $1 billion that only employs one person. And normally you'd have maybe 1,000, couple thousand people. So maybe you create this job, but then in a sense, there's a vacuum in terms of you create this company, but there's a vacuum in terms of jobs. That always
no oversight.
I always wonder how that works out. Yeah.
Why couldn't you have AI oversight AI?
Oh, you will.
Yeah, that's what the super agent concept is. So the folks at Cisco were talking about this, and that Palo Alto Networks, and was there a couple days ago. They were talking about the same thing. Their only fear is that the agent makes some of the same mistakes or same oversights that the human had done before it, based on what the agent learns from the operations at a company.
But that's just so now you train it to continually improve that. Let me give you another scenario. I don't know if you thought of it, John. You're talking about, we only have this one person. What happens if? Well, quite frankly, what's so special about that one person? Why can't we just put another person in? Because after all, it's the agents, the AI that's doing it anyway. I'll go one step further. Why even need the person?
Well, Alan, there's one job that we know will always be required. Matter of fact, it's going to be elevated quite a bit, whether it's from the TV series Expansion or iRobot or Blade Runner, and that's the human detective to figure out what the heck went wrong and where did AI go off track.
Elijah C. Bailey. But
Elijah Bailey.
Elijah Bailey was a robot, Mitch.
Oh, he wasn't. Oh, well. No, but I thought he was human. He was. You're right. He
No,
was
Elijah Bailey's a robot.
Oh, see, my theory's blown. There we go. Well, there's some humans that are detectives.
I think for now we still need some human oversight at this time. Maybe down the road we won't.
I think the time frame is that you said, Alan, is probably really accurate. 3 to 5 years. That's always, we look at all these surveys and polls and studies, and we talk to a lot of experts, and that time frame keeps coming up before we start seeing the creation of new types of jobs. My fear always is that you're displaced because you don't adapt to the technology. But that's a concept, or that's a reality that we face everywhere. There's certain people who are very good in certain regions of the country at adapting and transforming themselves in the workforce. And there are those who always resist it. So that'll play its way out too. So I suspect that places like Silicon Valley, parts of Texas, Colorado, all of the places we are, New York, Massachusetts, will be able to move along. But I always think of some of the other places where tech doesn't really quite pick up the pace. It just doesn't catch on in other regions of the country. And I think this will continue to be the case.
Yeah, I can think of so many dystopian movies. Well, to quote a good friend of mine, is I've been in tech a long time. And one of the things that I've learned is that predictions usually take about twice as long as we think it's going to take to happen. So when I hear 35 years, I think you're probably talking about 8 to 10 years before, not just saying we won't see change, but mass, significant, large
scale. Yeah, you're right.
Takes a long time to happen. And maybe AI will be different, so is cloud, and so is blockchain, and so is, every other thing that came along. And I'm not being the skeptic, but, it does take longer than it thinks. That we think the impact of things will be much greater, and it'll happen much sooner usually than what it takes.
There's old cowboy wisdom to that says never mistake a clear view for a short distance, right?
Oh, we've been hanging around in Nebraska, Wyoming,
Yellowstone,
Iron Park. Hey, the one thing too that's interesting to me, and Mike brought this whole notion, is the startup. The concept of the startup. Remember when it used to be really cost prohibitive, or was expensive to start a company because of the equipment, because of the tools that were necessary? Then that kind of went away. This accelerates it, perhaps, right? Mm-hmm. To the point where you have this workforce that's free for the most part, doing a lot of the tasks
we are in the era of everybody can create an agent right now, right? Microsoft just launched more agent capabilities and Copilot. We've had that in, you name it, Broadcom, Atlassian, all of these tools, both for developer, but a lot of citizen, quote unquote, developer. You don't have to be a developer, right? It can be natural language, whatever. So, whoever was saying we're going to be kind of managing this world of our own AI agent, if you will, I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Well, I just got to say, thank God the next administration understands this issue deeply and will be doing something about it.
Regulating it.
Needles and pins, pins and needles.
Man.
Happy man.
Just drop one and leave the room. Thanks, Mike.
No, well, but I'm not going to take Mike's bait. Okay. First person to pack up and move to the blue state, Mike Broussard.
For the first time, not taking the bait.
But let me give you a real world example. I was talking to our friend Mike Rothman this morning, right? And for those of you who don't know Mike is a longtime security analyst, player in the cyber world. And Mike, worked with us here at Techstrong. He left about a year ago, I bet. And Mike went and is now, him and his brother are running a family business in the candy business, candy and sweets. I call him Sugar Man. If you've ever heard that song by Rodriguez, an old song, Sugar Man. Yep. So I call him the Sugar Man. Anyway, I spoke to Mike this morning, and he is hip deep in an ERP migration at his company. He moved from sort of an old school not hosted, in the server room ERP to
On-prem.
a SaaS-based ERP. And it involved literally, because their ERP ran everything. And it involved literally every facet of the business and checking it and re-scripting stuff and moving stuff and working with Microsoft. And I said, Mike, how big an IT team do you have over there? He said, oh, it's just me. I said, how are you doing this? He said, well, I use ChatGPT as my friend. Right? And he's using it for Python scripting. He's using it to create sort of advanced macros in Excel. He's using it to do the logic and the Microsoft Office stuff. He's using AI. He is, the one human doing an ERP migration basically himself with the help of AI.
So you mean Mike Rothman may have solved the age-old never get on an ERP migration project dilemma?
He claims he's just waiting for the end of the fiscal year to pull the switch. It's just about ready. He's been working on it a few months.
Those are the most career-ending projects you can take on.
Well,
ERP.
he's family there, so what could happen to him?
All right, well, there's a lot of forgiveness in that. Gotcha. But your point is he's leveraging AI to do work that, he would have to hire somebody else.
And this isn't $1 billion startup or anything, but this is real world. This is real world. This is what people are doing right now with this AI stuff. Right?
Yeah,
and I think
we are. TikTok
you know,
and all the social media is just covered with people. I'm going to have ChatGPT or my plugin Copilot write a program that does this, and I'll show you how to do it, and it does it. And
It's amazing what it can do.
All I can think about now is that I Love Lucy episode when she's in the chocolate factory and they
like Rockman at the end of the put the bonbons in his shirt.
Without betraying my neighbor, he's getting a master's degree basically through ChatGPT. You just let me in on a secret. Like he's in the third module and he's ready to do his thesis. And he said, "Thank God for this."
Oh, it's an amazing tool.
It is.
Please don't mention his name on here, though, John.
No, I won't. He's already gotten in trouble before on other things. I won't go into it.
Oh my!
Eminently qualified. But look, but guys, real world. This is what we're dealing with.
Oh, yeah.
This is where rubber meets the road. Not in some highfalutin theoretical physics lab, right? But
can I ask a quick? Is it possible that well, I don't know what the answer is. I'm just going to throw it out. But is it possible that some of the AI agents from one vendor, like a Microsoft, might be better than, say, others? So therefore, the quality of the work or the quality of your startup is based on the agentic AI that you hired.
Sure it is. Absolutely.
So
that's going to be a factor.
What's behind the agent? It isn't just automating something. Is for agents to be effective, they have to have access to data, but they also have to have some kind of a knowledge graph that gives them context about how things fit together. That's how agents can do really productive work. Otherwise, they're kind of improvements on automation. I think we're in the calculator phase of agents, which is you can't use a calculator in class, right? And so we get past that, and now they're so common use. Everybody uses one in everyday life. They're scientific calculators to take my test with. Same thing in life with agents today.
And no one knows trigonometry anymore.
You can get out to protractor and slide rule and have fun. But I think agents are going to be common to people. Maybe not while I'm on Earth yet. Maybe so. But as calculators are on our phone, I think it's just going to be part of our environment.
Nobody knows how to spell anything anymore either. They just rely on the machine. So
or grammar.
Well, no one writes. Let's face it. Mm-hmm. But you know what? We're not AIs here. I think we're all human. Let's take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about digital twin tourism. That's great. I could sit in my walleye chair, and go anywhere while I'm eating bonbons like Lucy. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
All right, folks, we're back. And yes, we're going to talk about, well, digital twin tourism is a thing now. Apparently, the Vatican is making it possible to look at a digital twin of the entire basilica and everything around it. And you can go look at places that you're not even allowed to go in if you actually went there. It turns out, though, that this is just one of many of these things that we're starting to see. Amanda, I know that you've kind of looked into this in the past. What's your take? Is this going to be a real thing, or is this like some fad we're looking at?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And you can find several articles on Digital CXO about other versions of this. Our writer, Nathan, likes to cover those a lot. So I think it's a great way to preserve some really old or important buildings and still let people see the inside of these historical structures, but without any risk of damage. So I think we will see a lot more of that. And it's also a way for people, who don't have the budget to travel. It's allowing them to be able to travel and learn about the world, even just from their living room.
I'm reminded, I'll tell you guys a story. When I was a young kid, the idea of getting on a plane and going to Italy, to the Vatican, or anywhere on a plane was kind of out of our reach. I mean, most of us, I think, didn't grow up with our dad being a slumlord in Queens, New York, and leaving me $600 million.
Now, when I was growing up, you had to take a steamer to go see the Vatican, but that was a while ago.
Well, no, we had planes by then, Mitch, and you're my age. Yeah, but you were in Nebraska.
Not where I live. Crop duster.
Don't get me defocused here. Okay? Let me stay on. Anyway, my grandpa subscribed me to this. Remember the books where used to, in the back, there were like color stamps that you would peel out and you would have to lick them. You didn't peel them, you had to lick them. You would rip out the stamps, they were perforated, you would lick them, and you would place them in the proper place. You're too young for this, Amanda, so I'm sure
I remember these.
You do remember? Okay. And you would put the pictures in the appropriate place in the book. So my grandpa signed me and my brother Kevin up for a series of books that had, like, at that time, every country in the UN had its own little pamphlet book, and you would take the book and you would read through the book, and you'd go in the back and you'd tear out the sticker that goes into each picture frame in the book. So if you were in Italy and you went into the Vatican, they'd have a picture of the Sistine Chapel and all of these things. And you know what? For two kids growing up in the mid to late 60s, and we didn't really have money to go to the Vatican or Africa or Asia or some of the places my brother and I would read the books. That was as close as it got, but it made us feel like we were world travelers. As close as, like we were there, right? This is today's version of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, in a sense, if you can't afford it, or if you just want it, I mean, given the times that we live in, you want to divert your attention to something that's positive or something that's adventurous, you can essentially travel in a kind of an interesting way to some of these places and learn and educate yourself. Be interesting if people try to establish a residency outside the country through this type of way, where you have like an interaction with a pleasant, different type of culture. It's like an escapism.
But I don't know if you could, I mean, that's a whole different, you're talking about creating a world.
Yeah.
Interacting with real people or programmed people.
Yeah, but I was talking about just learning. Yeah.
I don't know if this reaches that level.
No.
I wonder if we could someday create versions of buildings that are no longer there, or the version of a building, whether
The
it's,
Roman Colosseum.
or, the Notre Dame Cathedral before the fire kind of thing.
Before the fire, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
I think we have. I think I posted an article. I can't remember.
Yeah, no, we
What?
did do something with Notre Dame.
Yes,
But,
we have. Mhm.
That's interesting. That the Notre Dame example is really interesting because of about, was it 2019? I was going to Paris, and I got we got the tickets before the fire, so it was that situation, and we went to the cathedral, but it was, of course, it was being reconstructed and being rebuilt or being
I was
renovated.
there before the fire. And then this past trip I went, it was still closed, right before the Olympics. But let me finish my thought on my grandpa's sticker books. My brother and I love those books. That and the World Book Encyclopedia. My mom invested in getting us a series of the World Book Encyclopedia. You remember they'd have those overlays of the human circulatory system and stuff like that. We learned so much more than kids today are learning, I guarantee you. But fast forward, that is a cheap substitute for going to see the Sistine Chapel in person. It's a cheap substitute for actually standing outside Notre Dame Cathedral and seeing the bell towers. It's a cheap substitute for seeing the world. And I hope and pray that we don't evolve into a society where people will sit at home on their fat asses going on digital twin virtual experiences instead of really experiencing the world, because there is no substitute for it.
No, but instead we're flying to Las Vegas and going to a place where we can experience a digital twin. You want to see one? I can open this curtain.
Yes.
I agree with you, and I'm going. I'm going to be seeing the Eagles there, right after reInvent. But
Hold that thought.
Now
you can visit Paris and Las Vegas and
yeah, but
Las
so that's a great example.
In Rome.
though. Paris and Las Vegas. How does that compare to Paris?
Right.
it's not even the same thing.
Right,
Not
and
even
that
close.
and that is Mike's been dying to do this the whole show. By the way, here it is, the Sphere,
I wish I could be there for that race.
the F1
That's
race.
fun.
F1
the,
this weekend.
yeah.
So if we have the holodeck, okay, let's go to the Star Trek Next Generation. There's a pretty damn close, digital twin of a real thing, right? Where you can really experience it. It's not the place, but if you could really create that kind of an experience, it was that close. I'm not. It would
Right.
still be valuable
And-
to go to see the real thing, but you could sure get a
But
lot
what
out.
made the
Literally.
holodeck interesting, Mitchell, is it wasn't just the place. You had people, characters, animals, and stuff
Yeah,
that were programmed
There's
into it.
all the
That's an
AI.
amazing shot of the Sphere, Mike.
Hey,
Um,
one thing, remember, people go to these places and they touch shit and ruin it. So, this is a way to preserve things. So-
Yeah, that was my point I was saying.
But let me give you another example. Let's say we go to the holodeck in Paris. Is the baguette and butter still going to taste as good as it does on the streets of Paris?
well,
You don't have the sights or the smells or the
No,
ambiance.
we do on the
Yeah,
holiday.
none
you
of it.
have the
Yeah, you do.
sights, but I don't know. if
It's
you're
not the
gonna-
same. It's like
Yeah.
real.
you got smell-o-vision,
Yeah.
I can pump some smells into your room and it'll be fine.
They want to
Keep those to yourself in the Sphere back there.
Okay, I see we're keeping that highbrow level of professionalism that we started off with
That's
here.
one digital twin I don't need to experience.
But nevertheless, as I said, for two young boys, that was our version of digital twinning tourism,
It's
right?
the imagination, right?
And but you know what? It set us on fire. Both my brother and I have traveled around the world a lot. My brother much more than I. He's done the Silk Road. My brother's been everywhere, including Antarctica. And I think a lot of that wanderlust is due to those sticker books we had when we were younger. And so maybe that is the silver lining here, right? People who experience this as digital twins then are more inclined to go do things. I think, quite frankly, one of the problems in America, bring it back to America, especially, I'm a Long Island boy, grew up in Long Island. Do you know how many people I know have never left Long Island?
A lot.
Yeah.
Because they think Long Island is the center of the universe and there is nothing to see.
A quick
It's
story. When I moved to Long Island from Nebraska, I thought, yeah, there's so many people in Nebraska that have never been out of this state. Boy, how backwards is that? I go to Long Island. How many people have never been off of Long Island? It's
Yeah.
like, okay. I
Well,
guess-
no, they might go to the city, right?
well, no, there are
going to the
people that have
city.
never been on Long Island. I mean,
Yeah.
that,
And so,
okay.
you don't want to encourage that, but if this would encourage people to, because I do believe that going out and meeting people around the world and you find out they're not as different as you think,
Absolutely.
and you have a lot more in common with them than not,
Well, talk about conference. How many times do we see? Why do we keep going to conferences when we have
because
Zoom,
they
right?
pay us.
Well, this is true. For some
Oh.
of us pay, some people pay to go to these things, right?
Yeah.
No, it's the personal experience. It's the personal interaction. It's the things you don't get in any high fidelity at all through digital experiences, right?
I have
what are
such
the-
good
what are the-
conversations with people from around the world. I learn a lot about the world just from talking to people at conferences.
So
Is
what are
that
the
what all
smart?
those people stumbling around the casino are doing? I didn't know.
Did you have here for the experience, Mike? The conversation.
So, what personal experience? One of the best decisions we ever made. It was for. I won't go down the path, but we left the country for a while back in the late '80s. We went to England, and that was one of the best decisions. We lived in London for a year and a half, and you learn more not just about other
Was it
cultures,
the
but about
Bush
your own country.
administration?
Yes, it was. And so you learn as
Well, that
much
was
about
benign.
your country when you live outside the country and the perspective, and you see things a little bit differently or more clearly. And you learn a lot about people in other countries. And you're right, Alan, we're all basically the same. And there's like this fear sometimes of the unknown in this country. I always kind of felt this way. Something you don't understand, you're scared of, like for some people. And I just think that the discovery is such a great thing. It's part of your personal education, part of making you a better world citizen. And I always treasure living there.
I will give one shout out to my hometown, the Bronx. Every day you meet somebody who's from somewhere else.
Yeah, but the Bronx has a way of leveling them all out, doesn't it, Mike?
Beating you down, is that what you're saying?
No,
But I
shout out
experienced
to
when
the
I
Bronx.
drove through the Bronx, was getting beat down.
The Bronx. The Bronx. The Bronx.
Oh my!
Yes. I think we might have had a sticker book about the Bronx. I think there was the zoo and the stadium and the gardens, the botanical gardens, right?
There you go, man.
All right. I think that's going to call a wrap to this rollicking version of the gang today. We have a Tech Field Day on today, I believe, that you can watch. It's Mobility Tech Field Day, as well as our usual great lineup of Techstrong TV content. So I invite you to watch that immediately following this. We will be back tomorrow, Thursday, with some great more gang content. I'll be here. I know you guys are in Vegas. I'm not sure if you'll both be here. John, you're always welcome anytime. I know you've
I'll see you
busy carrying
tomorrow.
out your royal duties.
Oh yeah, we'll see you tomorrow.
You're
I'll
on
be here.
tomorrow, okay? And Amanda, always welcome to have
Please.
Amanda here on the gang. Until then, though,
Rosani, Amanda
Yes.
Rosani.
Razzani, like
Lasagna.
lasagna,
Like
lasagna.
You know, if you gotten off of Long Island, you'd know how to say that.
That is the problem. A lot of my speech patterns are, I'm a child of my environment there. You know what I mean? Because we only had the stickers in the books. It wasn't like sound.
We're still audio.
So you put an R
Had
on
I
the
had
end of
the
everything
audio, I might be
you're supposed to
talking
say.
with a French accent or rolling my R's right now. Who knows?
Yeah, put an R on
Um,
everything. You're good.
This is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong Gang. We're out.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, everyone. It's Alan Schimmel, and we're back here at Techstrong TV. You know, our next guest is someone I've known in the security space probably longer than him or I want to even to admit to. We both been in security a long time. Lenny has made a name for himself and he's worked his way up, to the pinnacles of our cyber world, even before it was called cyber. Let me introduce you to my friend Lenny Zeltzer. Lenny is now the CISO at Axonius. I hope I pronounced that right. Lenny, welcome to Techstrong TV. It's good to see you on here.
Hi, Alan. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. So, Lenny, when you give someone an introduction like that, they do it to me too. It means basically we're getting a little older. But why don't you give people a flavor for your journey in the cyber world, into the security industry? Because it's one, I think people would want to hear.
It's fascinating to look back and realize that I started doing cyber work, more than 2 decades ago. I got into the field as a system administrator, then I got into network administration, I did a bit of software development, and I thought, at the intersection of all these fields is information security, as we called it back then. Ultimately, we decided to call it cyber. And over the years, I've both built and managed some security programs. I spent a lot of time consulting and advising others on how they can strengthen their security controls. And I also spent some time building security products and services. And right now, I find myself in the role of a CISO at Axonius, and I've been doing this job at Axonius for now about 5 years, which I'm happy to say is longer than the average tenure of a CISO, if the data that I have seen.
Extremely unheard of. Yeah, extremely rare.
And for me, it's been very rewarding to see the evolution of my role in my company because I have noticed that over the years of maturing our security program, I can tackle different projects of increasing complexity, and that's highly rewarding. And the reason why I've been able to do it here is because the company is in the space of asset management to address our customers' needs, to get visibility into what they have, and ultimately take action on any security configuration or other security gap issues that they may have in their environment. So our customers need to trust us with the kind of access that they give to our product, and thus my role is supported by the organization, and I feel that I'm able to successfully proceed from project to project as we mature our security program.
Excellent. And Lenny, it's an interesting thing. I know a few of my friends in a similar sort of role as you, and that is being a CISO for a cyber company. So Axonius is asset management. Cyber is a big part, is part of their go-to-market, if you will. And so it's one thing to be the CISO for a healthcare company, a finance company, a manufacturing company, what have you. But when you're the CISO for a company that is itself involved in this market, it's almost a higher level of a higher level of responsibility, because exactly as you said, other folks are trusting their cybersecurity type of stuff to you, And you have to be the one holding the door or guarding the door at your company, which is in itself watching their customers. So it's a lot of responsibility. 5 years doing that, you used to not have gray hair. I'm kidding, but it's a lot. Lenny, for people who want to get more information on Exonius, I'll spell it. It's Axonius. Is it Exonius.com?
That's right. Yeah, take a look, see what we do, and how it might help you with your security and IT journey.
Sure. So let's turn to our topic of discussion now, though, Lenny. For as long as I've been in security, and like you, it's going on 3 decades here, right? We're in 2025 almost. Budget, there's never been unlimited budget for security, though, to be fair, there have been years where, people realized that security was important and then there was budget available, especially most recently in these last couple of years where security has really become such a big priority. But nevertheless, one of the roles of a CISO is having to triage, prioritize. Where's my risk? What bang for the buck do I get from which solution? What's my team and roles and everything? How, what's the best way to spend my budget in knocking down as much risk as we can, or at least is acceptable to the board, to the C team, etc. Because no one has unlimited resources. And so I wanted to talk to you about that, and specifically, where does single sign-on controls fit within that triage kind of picture of, I can't have everything. I had to pick the things I must have or, nice to have. Where does that fit on it? If you don't mind, why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, sure. Just like any department of the company, the security team exists within the constraints of the budget that we have been given. And we need to decide how to best use that funding in terms of people, process, technologies. And depending on where the security program is in the company's journey, and depending on where the security leader is in their own personal journey, we will be looking to decide what projects do we invest into that, yes, give the company, let's call it the biggest bang for the buck, but also give the individuals involved the kind of success stories we can point to say that we have been valuable and useful to the organization. And I think single sign-on is one of those controls that we often think about. I think there are many foundational controls that we can point to, including those that, let's say, the CIS top 20 critical controls including asset management, getting visibility in what you have, and controlling access to what you have. Single sign-on is an essential piece of that. And I remember when we were just starting to formalize our security program at Exonius, I came into the organization, it was to a tiny company, a startup without a formal IT and security practice. And one of the very first things we decided to bring in was single sign-on. The reason for this is because just like in any organization, even when we were small, we had so many different SaaS applications being used. And at the time, each SaaS application was maintained, managed as a silo, which meant that in order to grant user access, you had to log into that application, provision users, deprovision users, if you remembered to do so, of course, assign the correct access. So it was very easy to say, this is one of the projects we're going to start with. And I want to point out that when selecting such projects, especially when the security leader is early in their journey with the company, they should be looking for something that has a high degree of likelihood of success, right? They don't want to start a project and then fail at it. They also want to find something that benefits the organization's security program, and they should find something that directly benefits the employees, hopefully making their lives easier. So single sign-on was one of those easy decisions because there's a way to roll out single sign-on that's not all that difficult, at least in the beginning. There's a way in which the security of the company benefits from it, and end users like it because there are fewer passwords for them to remember. So that's why we started with that project.
Absolutely. Single sign-on, well, it's all wrapped up into identity and access control, right? It's part of that today. And to me, whether we're talking about SaaS applications, cloud infrastructure, identity and access control is the killer security app in that space, if you ask me. We've made some progress, right? I mean, that's a good thing, I guess. Has single sign-on become easy enough, cheap enough that it is now, when you're doing your triage, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? You have to do that. Or is it still something, that you got to kind of, there's a trade-off involved?
It's hard to speak in generalities, of course, and every security leader needs to look at the applications they have to secure and consider how many of those applications are already integrated with the centralized identity management that they might have, and how many exist outside of it. Now, it used to be, before the world became dominated by SaaS applications, that software would be deployed within the enterprise, let's call it locally, and it would get integrated with an identity provider such as, let's say, Active Directory. But of course, now that's becoming less and less common. We consume applications that we don't host anymore, and we still need to control access to those applications. So I would say start by getting visibility into what applications like this exist. Some of them you know about, some of them you don't. And then look to see how many of those applications support single sign-on integration with your identity provider at the existing tier that you're purchasing from the SaaS providers. And cloud providers fall into this discussion as well. I find that there are a lot of SaaS providers that include single sign-on as base functionality. And I believe that this is how it should be. SaaS applications must be integrated with the identity provider of the organization to be manageable. And that's why I am so concerned and very unhappy with those providers that make single sign-on functionality inaccessible as part of the base functionality of their product and included only in the highest enterprise level tier that most of their customers don't need to purchase. This puts single sign-on out of reach of most organizations, and that concerns me greatly. So when you're starting on your journey to implement single sign-on, look at the SaaS applications that you already have. Determine how many of those SaaS applications support single sign-on integration that you need out of the box. Get those in place, and then gradually, year after year, start working with your vendors as the contracts are up for renewal to negotiate the kind of single sign-on you need from your providers.
Good advice, Glenn. Good advice. Now, of course, identity access management, single sign-on is not the be-all and end-all for these kinds of things. Give us an idea, what else does that compete with when we look at triaging resources and so forth in cyber?
Well, there's a reason why modern security control frameworks include multiple dimensions, multiple columns. So whether you're looking at CIS critical controls, or whether you're looking at the NIST cybersecurity framework or ISO 27001, they give you a listing of what aspects of the organization you need to include in your security program. Where to begin? Oftentimes, getting visibility into what you have is foundational. That means understanding what systems are deployed in your environment, what software is running on them, and what SaaS applications are being used. Once you have this visibility, then you need to understand, are these assets configured according to the state that is compatible with my security expectations, and then you start addressing whatever gaps you might find. We talked about single sign-on. Oftentimes, that's a big gap in relatively young organizations that have allowed SaaS software to be purchased independently without centralized oversight. Another easy project to think about when you start your security journey at a company where the security program is relatively mature is to look at the configuration of the endpoints, the systems that employees are using. So we talked about the configuration and visibility into SaaS applications and how access to them is controlled. Now let's talk about where those applications are being accessed from. Are the endpoints managed appropriately? And that includes, are they locked down to disable unnecessary protocols or features? Do we have a way to automatically keep them up to date on patches? And of course, is there an appropriate security agent running on these systems? And do I have a way of making sure that these systems are in a trusted state that's consistent with my expectations?
Excellent. Lenny, the 15 minutes here goes so quickly. I feel like we could make this into a course. I feel like, but if nothing else, for our folks out here, look, and many of you are cyber folks, and many of you aren't, right? DevOps, cloud native, what have you. This is the kind of real world, hands-on kind of knowledge that having a real CISO on your team brings to the table, an experienced CISO. And it's something that I think every organization needs to look at today and say, hey, do we have the right person doing the right things? Do we have our priorities right around security? Lenny, as always, thanks for coming on, making us just a little bit smarter. Keep up the great work at Axonius, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Sam.
All right, Lenny Zeltzik here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with more. Got a lot coming today.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hello, and welcome to the Digital CXO podcast. I'm Amanda Rosani, and I'm excited to be here today with Frederick Nilsson. He is the VP of Americas for Axis Communications. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Amanda. Thanks for having me here today from beautiful Boston, Massachusetts.
Wonderful. Happy to have you on our show. So, can you share a little bit about Axis Communications? What services do you provide?
Absolutely. So Access Communications, we are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. And back in 1996, we invented the world's first IP-based camera that later made us focus on the security surveillance market. And since 2013-ish, we are the global and America's #1 provider of video surveillance and security, and has continued to grow since then, and also launched other services and products such as IP-based audio, IP-based access control, and IP-based intercom, and grown to be a $1.7 billion global company that enjoys partnership and customers with a lot of the large Fortune 50 500s here in the Americas. If you're not in this space, you probably never heard about us. If you're in this space, you're going to start looking at security and surveillance cameras everywhere and see our little brand there.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on your success. So, video surveillance has come a long way. It's been quite the evolution. So, can you maybe share a little bit about the beginning of video surveillance to where we are now?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it can be divided up in a couple of distinct phases. It really started off predominantly in the banking and casino space that needed video surveillance back in the 80s and early 90s, where there was typically analog cameras with limited resolution and a lot of other limitations as well connected to a VCR. The VCRs that we all used to have at home, at least old people like myself used to have at home for viewing videos and movies and so forth. A little bit later, end of the 90s, it started to move over to digital recording called DVR, digital video recorders, still connecting to those analog cameras. The next trend, which was, as I mentioned before, innovated by Axis with the world's first IP camera, was to put all the intelligence and all the compressions out to the edge, sort of an IoT device, and do it there and then stream it over the internet to record on a server that could be located at the facility or somewhere else as well, to provide a lot of benefits when it comes to the scalability of the system and so forth. And that was kind of the fourth phase of video surveillance that was happening from mid 2000s to 2015. Most system was kind of phased over to digital or IP-based cameras from the analog ones. And the next phase we have today is the recording solution, and video management solutions are more and more moving over from on-prem onto the cloud based on great compression and so forth. So that is kind of the phase where now a lot of recordings, a lot of video management is still on-premise, but it's more and more for some businesses and application like schools and smaller retailers started to move into the cloud. And then what we're excited about for the future, which we can chat a little bit later, is the ability to do more with that video, i.e. using it with analytics or AI. So instead of doing forensics on recorded video, to be more proactive and intentional with how the video is used, both for security surveillance as well as business intelligence for different businesses. So that's kind of how the industry has progressed. And I think we've all seen on TV, or sometimes when a child has been abducted, you see grainy video from a gas station. That's really the old system. That's not what they look today. And then you've seen the other movies, the CSI type, where they zoom in indefinitely on a picture from anywhere in the world. That's the other reality that doesn't exist. We're somewhere in the middle in the video security industry today.
That's interesting that you shared that. So that other reality we aren't quite there yet.
It's getting, I wouldn't say close, depends on where you look at, but it's getting really a lot better and accelerating over the last couple of years. If you look over the innovations over the years, I talked about the IP and putting everything on the edge, kind of an IoT approach that started some 20 years ago. One driving technology in the early days was power over Ethernet, which meant that you need one cable to each of the cameras. Instead of power in the video cable, you can use one and attach it anywhere in the building and easily route it back to the server room. The other ones over the year was better and better compression. There was compression, the advent of H.264, a consumer-grade compression that we started to use in the 2008, 2009. And then a couple of years later, we implemented something we call Zipstream, which is really compressing it even harder because security cameras generate a lot of video. And with that, we could start increase resolution without overloading the network or overloading the servers with video recorder. And as we started to do that, we've actually come all the way from the early analog cameras that was 0.4 megapixel to the latest camera we just launched a couple of months ago. It's 41 megapixel. And just as a reference, you can have a large open air stadium and you can zoom in on the other side of the stands and see people clearly and the color of the clothing and what kind of hat they have on and those kind of things. So while we're not 100% there, the improvements over the last 10 years have been immense in this space as well when it comes to quality and what we can do with the systems.
So what else needs to be done to have that sort of born movie type completely world-connected surveillance where you can just zero in all over the world? What else is needed there?
So we need more cameras, and we're happy to provide them. But joking apart, there's a lot of cameras. If you look in the United States, I saw a number that there's close to 100 million cameras. We have 330 million people here. But I think the key thing that we need is, we talked about how the cameras have better resolution. They also have better light sensitivity today, because in a lot of areas, when it's dark at night, a lot of the bad guys happen to do things when it's dark because they think they're covered by that. The cameras, there was also an innovation that we came out with 6, 7, 8 years ago called Light Finder, where basically even when it's pitch dark and you and I can't necessarily see, the camera can see, because it has this extremely low light sensitivity with the sensor and how we process the video. So you can see things at night. So that is also getting us closer to the Bourne kind of CSI perception of what cameras can do. The next thing as well is to have the ability to use the video for something, to have the cameras be more intelligent as well. We say now the cameras can see better than the human eye. Now, how do we make them be smarter than the human brain? And of course, it won't keep up with all our lovely intelligence, but when it comes to certain things like detecting objects, detecting cars, detecting colors of cars, license plates, they're really becoming very, very accurate and very good. And if you think about the 100 million cameras, one of the challenges, who's going to look at all this video? And most of the video that is recorded today is just thrown away 30 days later. I would guess 99.5, 99.9% is just thrown away. It's backed up if something happens. But if that video can be used for being more proactive for security and surveillance, and even better, if it can also be used for business operations, for retailers, for airports, for logistics companies, for data centers, now all of a sudden, all those cameras are providing a lot more value for the users of them, and can take over some of the mundane and repetitive tasks that we have humans doing today. So I think that's really the next progression of video security surveillance that we see now, and that we see happen quite rapidly since the advent of deep learning processing all the way out in the edge, which only really happened 2-3 years ago.
The other question I have is, do you think we ever will actually have that fully connected type of system? And if so, are there some regulations needed with that when we talk about privacy concerns and things like that?
That is a great question. First of all, I think it's important to think about privacy and regulation and ethical use of video security and video surveillance. And when we talk about AI, there is something that came out of Europe earlier this year called the EU AI Act, how AI can be used and not used, which we really like, because they, instead of looking at different technologies and say facial recognition cannot be used, they look at different use cases instead and say there is low risk, medium risk, and high risk applications. So when you and I go through the customs control at the US airport, and if you're signed up with the global entry, you volunteer that biometric information to the US customs, which they have anyway because you have the picture in the passport, you can get in without showing any papers because they recognize you. They might need the fingerprints as well, but typically just with the face. We all enjoy that and like that. When it comes to social scoring in a city surveillance applications where they monitor people's faces and see who is jaywalking over the crosswalks and then fine you directly without anyone being there, we don't necessarily love those applications, which happens in some countries. So I think there's a lot of regulation in that space that all serious vendors need to comply to. There's also, when we talk about AI, which is really improving very, very quickly, as you know, also with the Gen AI applications, but also when it comes to image recognition, we need to be careful how, or anyone who's implementing those solutions need to be careful how the video and how the algorithms and how the models are being trained, what data they're being trained on. And there are some cases where companies have not followed the policy of how they can train the video, and they've been fined, tens of millions of dollars by the government because they're not using it in an ethical way. And then to your question as well, when it comes to privacy, that's of course something that there is regulation. The regulation chain is different between different countries. And it's also the expectations of being surveilled or not surveilled. If you go into a retail store, there's an expectations of having surveillance cameras. If you go into a casino, there's an expectations of being surveilled. If you go into a bathroom or a changing room, there's expectation of not being surveilled as well. So there's some level of privacy to cut things in a simple way. I think in general, also when it comes to privacy, as much as we all love privacy, as long as you trust the other side at doing the security and surveillance, if that's the city of Boston or the state of Texas or an airport, I don't think most people are concerned. I've seen surveys when they ask people understanding what video security and surveillance can do today, how many people accept that they're out in the public space, and it's typically in the high 70s and 80s of people having the expectation and accepted that it's there because it has more benefits than not. But of course, we all cared about the privacy as well, and there are regulations around that.
When we look to cameras as a solution, I do have another question about the integrity of the actual technology. How safe are the cameras, and how costly is it to keep the cameras in good condition and actively working properly?
That is another great question, and that kind of ties into both having the camera working properly and the developments happening very fast today when it comes to the capabilities of the cameras, both when it comes to the resolution and the image quality, but most importantly when it comes to the analytics or AI that we can do in the cameras today. But then also when it comes to cybersecurity. And if you think about a large airport with 5,000 cameras, or a retailer with 1,000 locations and 40 cameras in each location, you do the math, this might be the highest vulnerability from a cybersecurity perspective that they have of any technology implemented. And as we come from an industry that are used to implementing a closed off system with an analog network to the IP world, it's important that we spend a lot of time and effort to educate the both installers and integrators, as well as the end customer, how important it is to look at this from a cybersecurity perspective. And with a lot of equipment, there is a policy on the IT side to update those every 5 years because of technology and software support. That is not yet happening in the security industry, and I think it has to get there to be able to fully say these are cyber secure, because they do get updated every 5 years and have the latest software, latest firmware, and a hardware that can cope with the latest patches as well from a cyber perspective. Not saying they're not cyber secure, but often they need to be on a closed off network behind the firewall because of these limitations. And if you really want to use the full advantages of the cloud and AI, we need to tie them into larger systems, and also making sure they're updated for cybersecurity.
Absolutely. Well, if there was one key takeaway you could leave our audience with today, what would that be?
I think the key takeaways, and I can choose two just because of that, is that cameras are basically everywhere today. They're really providing great value for the users and also the patrons or the customers of the retails and airports in running those operations very, very effectively. And also, those cameras and security systems are going from being relatively dumb cameras that you can look at the video after the fact to be very smart IoT devices that can do a lot of things to provide more efficient operations and more enjoyable environment for the customers and patrons of those facilities.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you for coming on our show and sharing your insights with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Amanda.
All right, and thank you to our audience. Stay tuned, there's more.
I'm Bonnie Schneider, Sustainability Contributor to the Techstrong Group. I'm excited to introduce you to a groundbreaking new initiative from Techstrong Research, the Sustainability Pulse Meter. The Pulse Meter offers valuable insights into how environmental responsibility factors into tech purchasing decisions for key players in the industry. Position your company as a leader in the industry and differentiate from your competitors with the Sustainability Pulse Meter, offered exclusively from Techstrong Research.
is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're live here at we're live on Techstrong TV here at KubeCon in Salt Lake City, wrapping up our third day of coverage. I want to introduce you to Ross O'Neill. Ross is from Andela. Ross, first of all, welcome to Techstrong TV. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Ross, before we get into Andela and the announcements and the show here, you know, we were talking off camera. You're from Ireland. Makes you Irish, right?
100% Irish, born and bred. 100% Irish beef.
As they say. But you're living in London.
I am.
So there must be a story there.
Yeah, there is. So my background, I did computer science in university in Dublin. I worked for a number of years in the edtech scene. I then moved to London because I was one of the first employees, like less than 100, I'd say, at Raspberry Pi. So I don't know if you know Raspberry Pi.
I know them well, yeah.
Small computer. And then, ended up working at Andela, which is a fully remote organization, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's fully remote.
Fully remote, yeah.
How do you like that? How long have you been doing the fully remote thing?
3 years, 3 years. And then maybe there was an extra year on top of Raspberry Pi, two with the pandemic when we all went.
Well, we were all remote then.
Remote then, yeah.
Excellent. And what do you do with Andela?
So at Andela, I'm the senior manager of learning. We have a learning division that's concentrated on learning programs, upskilling, certification. So to give you a bit of context about Andela, Andela is like a private tech talent marketplace. So essentially, if you're an engineering manager or a CTO and you're hoping to hire different talent from a borderless force, you can connect with Andela in regards to finding the right person no matter where they are in the world. So we have over 150,000 technologists across 135 countries, and we have a Andela talent cloud where we can match according to your needs and requirements.
Now, is this for full-time employment or contract work?
Contingent roles, contract. So, and we have, multiple different types of organizations, from large enterprise clients, like GitHub is a client of ours, to small, medium enterprise.
Wow, very cool. Very cool. 150,000 worldwide.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that it's very, very attractive to engineering managers and CTOs within these organizations is they're not just trying to find the right talent for the right skill that they have, where they're not just, traditionally speaking, they'll be accessing a constrained talent pool, the same market pool that's nearby their office, for example. But our talent is mainly in emerging markets. So 60% of our talent marketplace is based in Africa.
Okay.
So one of the best things that we always hear, one of the things I'm hearing at KubeCon is like, we have a lot of great roles, but I'm not finding the right people. I was like, well, have you considered, the emerging market? And because there's great talent there, great minds, and they're very eager to learn and to get these opportunities.
Sure.
We match them based on that.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. It's ANDELA.com.
Andela.com. Yeah.
Andela.com. Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about why you're here at KubeCon.
Yeah.
You guys also had some announcements, and let's jump into that.
Yeah. So we just recently at the keynote there, along with Chris, we are excited to launch a learning partnership with CNCF. So Andela is around 10 years old. And part of our, not just matching, our talent with jobs, we have a long legacy of upskilling and building learning programs for talent specifically in Africa. So this is kind of adding to this legacy of doing it. So we're going to train around 20,000 to 30,000 talent specifically in Africa, in KCNA and CKAD, and that's just the beginning of hopefully a very fruitful partnership over the next coming years.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And how is that being financed?
So no costs to the talent. CNCF and Andela are putting their time,
effort, and equity into this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's fantastic. What a great thing, man.
Yeah.
And when you say Africa, look, Africa is the second largest continent in the world. Most of our maps got it wrong because they don't have it, in true size.
Yeah.
But Africa is a very, very large continent. So when you say Africa, are we talking from top to bottom?
Top to bottom, yeah, top to bottom. But I would say a majority, in terms of what we've seen through our learning programs, we've trained over 100,000 technologists to date. That's around 15% of the developer workforce that currently exists. Around 700,000 recently reported in terms of software engineers and developers that exist in Africa. And in terms of the areas that are growing, we would say a lot of talent will be applying from, I would say, Nigeria, Kenya, Rwanda, Ghana, but it'll be open to a lot of the other countries as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Where can people, I mean, imagine people can get more information both on CNCF and the Andela website.
Yeah, so you can definitely go to andela.com if you're hoping to find talent. Again, borderless, completely remote, and you're having it, quite challenged to find the right person for that role. Definitely go to andela.com. We would definitely want to hear from you. If you want to know more about our learning programs, as I mentioned, this is an add-on of a legacy we worked with Google, Salesforce, AWS, Microsoft over the last number of years. And you can go to andela.com/learning, and you can see about our partnership information from CNCF as well.
I love it. Excellent. You guys have never done a program like this before, I would imagine.
This type of program?
Yeah.
We've done some, yeah.
Yeah?
Done some, yeah.
And they've been successful.
Yeah. So we actually ran for 5 years with Google. We call it the Google Africa Developer Scholarship, and we trained nearly over 100,000 African developers in web application, cloud infrastructure,
That's fantastic,
React. So this is a build on of a legacy of us, and that's why CNCF, we could showcase this is something that we have always been doing.
You have this DNA,
and we would and we're going to do it anyway, so we would love to partner with you and grow. One of the best things about this partnership as well is we're growing our Andela learning community. We have this Andela learning community of, as I mentioned, over 150,000, but it's also about them joining this community. And so we're really excited about fostering that. It's not just about the certification opportunity, but joining, Cube Days, meetups, hackathons, the different learning and resources and training that they can get access to beyond our program as well, networking, the community element to it. Maybe, in the future, we could be at KubeCon Nigeria and having a follow-up conversation,
Count me in. I've never been to Nigeria. I'd like to do Kenya, too, if you can pick that out for me. But just saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ross, that's great news. And you know what? That's good work, man.
Yeah.
It's what the world needs.
Yeah, we're really excited. And we're really excited to build on this wonderful, the energy here, the people we've been talking to, absolutely wonderful. They're eager to grow it. And we have a huge talent pool and a lot of learners that want to get connected to it. So we're excited.
So it's a good thing. It's, look, there's a lot of goodness that LF and CNCF are involved in. We tend to look at this floor and all these companies and, and it's big money. No one's saying it's not. But there's also a lot of good things like this that are just, good.
It's a win-win, across for the talent in Africa. It's completely free. They get upskilled. And then in relation to Andela, we work with a lot of companies who build roles on our platform, and we match them accordingly. 90% of those roles have Kubernetes as a skill point. So we're meeting that strategic demand. And for CNCF, they want to grow in that market and build and foster that community. So there's no downside for us other than I have a lot of work to do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
All right, get to it, man.
Pleasure.
Ross O'Neill, Andela, bringing skills and certifications to Africa and bringing jobs to Africa from around the world and bringing talent that's badly needed to companies around the world.
The job board there, have you seen it? We're hiring just everywhere.
Everyone, if you can find someone with skills.
Yeah.
All right, we're live. We're wrapping up KubeCon Day 3. Stay tuned. More coming your way in just a moment.
Cloud Native Now is the web's leading resource for the growing cloud native ecosystem. CloudNativeNow.com is your destination for news, thought leadership, features, and webinars on cloud native architecture, Kubernetes, serverless, cloud native application development, microservices, service mesh, cloud native security, and more. Stay on the cutting edge of modern application development at Cloud Native Now.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're back here live at KubeCon. Really happy. It's a crazy KubeCon. I'm always amazed. I've been going to KubeCon since 2018, 17, something like that. And I always forget the energy at these.
Oh, it's crazy.
It's one of the highest energy shows that I've go to year in and year out. So good to be here. Our next guest is Ben Ghazi. Ben is the co-founder, CEO of Kodiak.
That's right.
Kodiak with a C. Ben, welcome.
Yeah.
Two C's. Well, C in the front, C in the back.
Code Maniacs, not the bear.
Code Maniacs.
Yeah.
Well, that's a K. But anyway, Ben, welcome, man. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate
So,
it.
Ben, look, most of the people watching this live are not here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we want to tell them a little bit about kind of what's going on here. But also, people always want to know who's talking, right? Here's a guy, he's a co-founder, CEO. Everybody thinks they could do a better job than their boss. and they have visions of maybe starting a company. What about, tell us a little bit about your journey that led you to start a company.
So Kodiak, I'm co-founder with my co-founder. We started it from the very beginning. We worked together a lot before we started Kodiak as consultants. We're systems architects. We built a lot of teams, built a lot of software, some pretty cool stuff in oil and gas, some pretty cool stuff in a few small startups that were doing some pretty wild things with machine learning and computer vision.
Sure.
Anyways, we kept building these teams and the software and kept snagging our shirts and our teams on being able to ship products, being able to focus on software and not the cloud, the product and not Kubernetes. And so we sort of had our light bulb moment about 5 years ago. And we were like, okay, look, Kubernetes is, arguably the best place on the planet to scale up an app and scale up your product and have a product run successfully in the cloud, right? Sort of why it was built. But it's sort of like the worst place on the planet for your team to scale up, right? It's entrenched in nuance and esoteric stuff, and it's really, really difficult. So we wanted to build a platform that used Kubernetes in all its glory, so you could auto scale things and you could, truly have this really nice system that will scale to the ends of the world, but also have a usability that your mom could even do this, right? So like, I want to have a big tent when it comes to building software. I want my QA people in there. I want my product owner in there. I want my CTO in there. I want everybody clumped together so that we can all see how our software is getting built and deployed, so that we can actually have a life cycle that works for my team, might be different for your team. So we set out to fix that.
Yep.
Right.
So it's 10 years. Well, no, yeah, a little over 10 years that I started DevOps.com.
Yeah.
10 years ago, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, the whole way we built, this whole concept of what DevOps is and how it works and how teams work with it was new, fairly new.
Yeah.
And not only fairly new, there were a lot of naysayers, right? There were a lot of people who said, this is all nonsense. It's not going to work. It can't work. And over 10 years, we've seen this whole world ecosystem kind of built up around this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tools. I mean, when I started DevOps.com, here were your DevOps tools. You had Jenkins, then you had Jenkins. You had Chef and Puppet and Ansible, and you had Jenkins.
Right.
That was probably 95% of your DevOps usage. Today, we look at tool chains and tools. It's no wonder that, like, a lot of people in platform engineering say it doesn't work at scale. There's so many friggin' tools. There's so many different steps in this factory, in this supply chain. We got to put in guardrails.
Yeah.
We've got to.
It's incredibly difficult, right? So, I mean, look at this place. It's brimming with people trying to figure out.
Well, because you have an organization here that has 180 different projects they're managing.
Yeah.
Right?
There's probably 20,000, 30,000 people here.
15, actually.
15?
Yeah, this is the biggest one.
Trying to find out
what's the
best way, right?
And the answer is there may not be a best way.
There isn't.
There's a best way for it's the right tool for the job.
I will say this, though, right? CNCF, they do great at bringing to bear, a new way, right?
Yep.
But they're projects, right? And they're open source. They're not commercialized, right?
No.
They're not meant to be commercialized. We're all supposed to work on it together. Kodiak is sitting on top of a bunch of open source projects, right? And that's great. The problem we have, and the problem that we're trying to solve is this tool chaining has gotten out of hand, right? Like, how many tools do we need now to operate properly? And then if we stack up all these tools, who's managing it? Right. Who's taking care of it? Who's nursing it? Who's putting it to bed at night? Who's waking up at 3 in the morning?
That's why you have these things like platform engineerings and SREs and all of these. And I'm not saying they're superfluous or not necessary. There's a place for all of it.
There is.
But what we've done is it's like as the timeline moves forward, the complexity goes like,
it was supposed to get easier.
Right. Instead it got more complex.
It got way more complex.
So let me throw a counter one at you, Ben. Should we just say screw it, wait for AI to solve all this for us?
It's all okay. I got a great answer for this. Right. It all boils down to trust, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we were actually just having this conversation at lunch. AI doesn't have empathy, right? So sort of by definition, they're sociopaths, right? They don't care if the app burns down in production because they checked the checkbox like they said they were going to do. And so like AI, in my opinion, is sort of the worst thing to put as a DevOps manager, right? Because it's not empathetic for my needs, which is keep my business running. I like the mechanical, right? So like, the way we have it today, we mechanically make things happen, and that's great. Now, should there be a layer on top of that you can talk to a Jarvis and be like, "Hey, Jarvis, spin up a new environment for me, and
put my new suit on
my
too."
Yeah. So I like that for AI in DevOps, right? Sort of a natural,
agentic, right?
Yeah, like
an agent.
Yeah, a buddy, right? Somebody that I can talk to, an
digital assistant.
right? But that assistant has to broker out those things to a mechanical. It can do it this way. It will do it this way. It will not have opinion, right, on how to deliver.
Yes.
Right.
And it's a double-edged sword, right? Because you want an opinion. You want someone, a human, I guess, looking at it like in that strange. So Kodiak's the answer then.
Well, we're an opinionated system for sure. I mean, we built it. We built what we built, with sort of the scars on our neck look, I need a few things out of something like what we built, like truly automated, not through a CI/CD pipeline. I want to be able to say, are my things repeatable, and are my things uniform? Right. So like the advent of containers, like you saw it on DevOps.com. Once containers became a thing, shoom, like everything should have gotten cleaner and simpler, but they didn't. They actually got more complex.
I knew it wasn't going to get.
It's insane. I love containers.
No, I love containers
Kubernetes, but like, holy.
I remember going to DockerCon.
Yeah.
In Austin in like 2017, maybe.
Yeah.
it's 16, something like that. And I came back and I told my team, I said, look, I saw this new thing there called Kubernetes that everyone says is going to, rule how we do our containers and Docker.
Yeah.
I said, but they're wrong. It's so friggin' hard. No one's ever going to want to use it. Well, famous last words.
It is famous last words. Some of the human condition, though, is like wanting to do the hard thing.
Yes.
Which is kind of crazy to me. But I do it too. We all do.
But,
so going back to the containers and the opinionated part of it is like we wanted to. Okay, so we broke up the monolith as an industry, and we got into containers, and and then we found that, oh wow, managing 15 of these things is really, really difficult. And so we wanted to say, no, keep your 15, keep your distributed system and distributed architecture, but treat it like a monolith, right? So treat these things as a unit and treat these things as one system. And so that's sort of where we separate ourselves from the pack, is like when we talk about automation and repeatability, we mean it at the system level. And each container obviously has to be a part of that and will help you along the way for each individual one. But like the real big thing for us is I want to create an environment on demand of 15 microservices. How hard should that be? Can I create a production environment right next to production in blue-green? How long would that take? Is it 2 months, 2 weeks, 2 hours, or 30 seconds, right? For us, it's 30 seconds. I can create an exact copy of production and on a different cluster,
right.
Exactly the same things in a couple of seconds. And so we wanted to be able to say environments on demand, right? Infrastructure on demand, dynamic configurations, right? So like configuring at deployment time instead of configuring inside of a CSE pipeline.
Got it.
These are the tenets that sort of make us really
drive
happy.
what you guys are doing. I want to pivot for the rest of our time. So Kodiak is, all kidding aside, CODIAC.
Yeah, you see it?
And is it Kodiak.io?
IO.
Yeah. Hey, what are you doing if they take the IOs away?
Are they thinking about that?
Oh, you didn't hear this story? I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. I hope you got a plan B,
I got a backup. I got a plan B. We own fyaml.dev.
Okay. So .io, right, is a top-level domain for some island country in the Mariana.
And we rent these domains.
Right, from them. It's a big moneymaker for
Right.
them. Well, they've decided to join into the Mauritius country, and ICANN is doing away with the .io top-level domain.
It's bad for me.
Go grab AI or TV or something.
Yep.
But yeah, IO may not be here by next year.
We also own it puts the lotion on.com, so maybe we just move that.
That's a whole different business plan. I'm not going to go there. Anyway, but for now, if you go to Kodiak.io,
that's right.
How do you engage? How do people engage?
You can get started right online. Just, so we love user feedback. We love getting into the community. A system like this is sort of built for the hands-on developers. And so jump in there, you create a cluster, you add a couple workloads, you add a DNS, you're off to the races. And in about 5 minutes, you'll have something deployed that you can start playing with and seeing, like, is this something that I want to be a part of or not?
I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, Ben, thanks for coming on
Appreciate
here,
you
man.
having me.
Kodiak.io for now. Don't worry about the lotion thing. We're live here on Techstrong TV at KubeCon. We'll be back in a little bit. Stay tuned.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Techstrong Unplugged. I'm your host, Tad Solomon, and this is episode 32 of our series. In this episode, we're taking you to AI Dev Summit 2024. There, our co-host Cassandra Chin met up with Jake Reichert, and they discussed AI, iteration, and timing the tech market. Jake is a seasoned software developer and engineering leader with more than 20 years of experience. In this episode, he'll discuss the strategic decisions that drive innovation at major tech companies, as well as the intricacies of launching new products. Without further ado, let's head over to AI Dev Summit 2024.
Welcome back to Techstrong Unplugged. My name is Cassandra Chin, and today we're here with Jake. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Jake Reichert, and I am a software developer and engineering leader. And I've been a developer and manager for 20 plus years at this point, in anywhere from getting startups off the ground from a handful of people up to managing teams at Amazon.
Do you want to talk about maybe how you got started into technology?
Yeah, so my background originally was in math and physics, and at the time that I was in school, there was still a lot of the internet that was being figured out and built, and I realized pretty quickly that was what I wanted to be working on. I wanted to be a part of figuring out how to solve some of those problems, and just kind of blazing this trail in an area nobody really knew. It was not that dissimilar from the landscape now with AI, with that same kind of level of excitement and passion around it that people had. So I went to school in San Francisco, and that was clearly a place where there's a lot of energy around that. So just being around it all the time, I was very interested to be a part of it.
And along your journey, have you been to startups and lots of different companies?
Yeah, so I've worked at, I would say predominantly I've worked at startups that are anywhere from 30 up to 200 people. But I've also worked at places that are larger and smaller. At the largest end, I worked at Amazon. I was part of Amazon Music. I was managing a lot of the teams doing front end development for pretty much everything that was not voice. So web browsers, phones, TV sets, you name it. And at the other end of it, I've been involved with companies where I was one of the co-founders, and starting from that level and building up from there.
It's a lot of interesting things you've done.
Yeah, I would say, there's one of the things that's interesting to me is, I've been predominantly in the startup world. I went to Amazon mostly because I wanted to learn things that I felt like maybe I couldn't learn those at a small organization, but I wanted to take those lessons and apply them, elsewhere. But for me, there's always kind of been this real excitement to working in the startup environment because, there is, of course, a high risk of failure, but there's also just this level of excitement that it's hard to find in some other positions. You're usually not working at a startup because you're not excited about it. Everybody there is usually 100% behind whatever the company's mission is and really trying to make that thing a reality. And sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail, but the journey in it, I think, is probably more important than kind of the end result.
It's a really different environment when everyone's really passionate for what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. And also where people might have, particular expertise in particular areas that they're really looking to apply. Early on, I remember one of the places that I worked at was a startup that it never made it. You never would have heard of it, but it was building the first chat software, like voice chat software over the internet. And this is when still everybody was on dial-up modems. And there was a guy in France who was our CTO, who basically his background was in signal processing and data compression, which was pretty much what you're doing with speech recognition. So he had come up with this idea for how to build this, and even though most people at the time felt like, well, there's not enough bandwidth when you go outside of a local network, over the wider internet, to make that work. He felt like, no, I feel like I have a plan to make that work. I was a junior developer at that point, so I came in, basically took a lot of direction from him. I learned a lot in the process, but seeing that actually work, I still remember the day when we started having our meetings over the internet and being able to talk through it. And it's compared to today, it was scratchy. There's a lot of it breaking up, but it was just like that factor of like, I can't believe this actually works. It is that same feeling that you have when you're like talking to Chat GPT, and it's like, how does it do this? It was that same level of kind of like feeling like magic.
This is not entirely polished, but it's really new and it feels magical.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the things that I think is true at any startup is you can't really be a perfectionist, right? You have to be willing to build something, put it out there, figure out what people like about it, really take that feedback into consideration, and then quickly do something with it, right? Which basically means you're not trying to build a finished product right out the gate, because it might not be the right one. Like, you have to actually put something out there and just like, that's enough for your customers to be able to say, is this good enough? Is it not good enough? My current company that I'm a co-founder at, Sagen AI, we're building real-time conversational avatars. And we've gone through probably, 7 iterations in the last 9 months of kind of what the core of the product looked like. Who was the audience? Was it more like large businesses? Was it consumer end users? And a lot of that was just seeing the usage patterns when we put it out there. Like, what are people using it for? I'll give one example is that, we'd come out with it originally thinking this is going to be really interesting to retailers. It's like a virtual customer assistant agent. And we have gotten interested in that, but the place we've gotten a surprising amount of interest is from consumer end users who are paying to use it as a conversational partner for learning English, which is not something we ever designed it for. Or even, we had our list of 20 things that we thought, oh, here are all the things that people might use this for. That wasn't anywhere on that list. Like, we're as surprised as anybody else. But instead of just saying, that's curious, and ignoring it, we basically said, oh, okay, well, if that's what people are actually willing to pay for, like, let's do more of that. Like, let's find out what is it that those people are interested in. That could be just like sending out a survey to them and saying, like, what do you think of this and this? What are the top 5 features you'd like to see in this? And then using that to shape the next kind of iteration of development. And on the flip side, you have to be willing to throw out what you think are like your best ideas if people don't actually care about them, right? You can work on these things all day long that you think are like the coolest CS or product feature kind of ever, but if nobody's actually interested in using that, from the perspective of building a business, it's not really worth putting a lot of time into.
That's really difficult. You have to reprioritize your ideas and really listen to user feedback.
You do, and it's I think a lot of people, their first instinct is to reject that feedback. Even people who are kind of seasoned professionals, if somebody gives you negative feedback about your product, it's very easy to get defensive about that. And I think it takes a while to get used to the idea of like, well, they're not putting you down. It's not about you personally. They're not saying that like you're somebody who comes up with bad ideas. They're just saying like, this isn't useful for me the way that it is. Now you do have to weigh that off against, you can't like jump on one piece of feedback from one person and say like, oh, well, we never thought of that, and then change your whole strategy, right? But if you start to see that pattern, I don't necessarily mean from like, tens of thousands of users. We usually are able to make pretty good decisions based on feedback from like, a dozen, 2 dozen users. You can see enough commonality in there. It's like, it's probably not, strictly speaking, statistically significant, but it's enough that it's like, it's probably right. You're directionally probably right if you're like, 5 of those people said this, and that feels right, so let's kind of do things in that direction. And then there's other things that you have to listen to and say, yep, thanks for your feedback. It's not the direction we're going in with this. It's either, just like not our expertise, not the company we're trying to build, maybe somebody else will, or just like we're not excited about going in that direction.
Before you talked about the use case for language, like is that company still like going that direction now?
No, that company was it was interesting. I think we're going to see a lot of this in the AI landscape as well. It's kind of a victim of timing. The the infrastructure just wasn't there, or maybe the need wasn't quite there at the time that we were building it. We thought it was pretty great, and we found a few companies who thought it was pretty great as well. But at the end of the day, there wasn't a compelling use case for it of people saying, well, why do I need to talk to people over the internet? Now today it's kind of obvious what some of those things might be, but at the time it was, I think that we were spending a lot of our time in customer meetings trying to convince people why they would need something like this. And in my experience, it's much easier to sell things into customers when it's like you're solving an existing need than trying to create a need and then telling people they should like be interested in that, And that's not impossible. I mean, that's essentially what Facebook did, right? It's like, it's not like everybody in the world was on a social network. They're looking for, the next best social network when Facebook came out. They basically created this platform, and people then like saw this thing that they wanted that they'd never been on before. Same thing with, just as simple as like early broadband providers, right? Like, why do I need this, pay all this money for a faster internet connection? Like, I can check my email just fine, right? But like, that is one approach to it. But for consumer products, I think it is typically easier to get people interested in something that like where there's like, here's a need and we're going to fill it. So that one, that was an example of where a few years later, Skype took off. Of course, they had video in it as well, and the bandwidth was there to support that, which we didn't have available to us at the time. An example I think of a lot is I had a friend who worked at a company they had this idea of building a portal where you could, upload video of like, your friends and family, or just like short movies that you made yourself, and like then like have it so that anybody in the world could like go and watch them. And, sounds a lot like YouTube, but it was like 2 years before YouTube, and they didn't make it because same thing, like the broadband adoption wasn't there. And so the process of actually watching the videos was just like too slow. And so had it been 2 years later, probably would have been a great idea. But sometimes there's an element of timing that goes into it as well, that you just, you have to take your best shot. You can't really factor that in, there's no timing the market there. You just have to do it and see if it's people are going to use it then or not.
Yeah, that's very tricky when we're talking about timings.
Right.
And I always hear the phrase, like, don't time the market in stocks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit like that, right? You do have to be thoughtful about what's possible with the technology that's out there, So like as an example, at Sagen, one of the things that we struggled with early on was the responsiveness. You would say something to these 3D avatars, and it would be this pause of, it started out fairly long, like 10 to 12 seconds. It was down to 4 seconds, but even at 4 seconds, it felt like a little bit long. And we got some sort of expert advice from people, in the AI space working on these topics in particular. And they did some research that, yeah, based on, what we see out there, we don't think this is possible. We looked at it and said, well, we don't agree. We think it is. And we were able to figure out, not using any tricks related to making the response from the LLM faster, which is kind of what they were looking at, but looking at making all the stuff around it faster, So we did all kinds of things like introduced message-based architecture. So, you could ask questions, have the responses come back kind of asynchronously. If the response is going to be 5 sentences, have your text-to-speech renderer, process all 5 sentences at once and then send them back. It gave the illusion, and then we would sequence them back in the right order when it would speak it back. That would then give the impression to the end user that it was faster than it was. Or one thing we did, which was kind of the audio equivalent of, when you see spinners or like a waiting button when you press a button to like submit a credit card number or something like that, which was you would ask a question and then we'd have these stock phrase that would say like, that's an interesting question, or let me think about that. And we'd throw those in every once in a while if the wait was starting to feel too long. And then that gave the illusion that there was less of a wait than there actually was. So that we're trying to use as much as we can to our advantage of what's out there today. But a lot of that was us really thinking about what do we think is possible with the given state of technology. But then there's certain other things that we've said, there X, Y, and Z could be cool things we could do, but not now, because we actually don't think the technology is there to do that today, even if we really push the envelope. It's just there's too many other problems that need to get solved first that we ourselves don't know how to solve. And so those are things we're not going to make a gamble on those ones for right now.
That definitely makes sense. There's a lot of strategy involved when handling startups and what to invest technologies.
Yeah, I mean, you're as opposed to a large company, you're always going to be struggling for resources, both human resources and financial resources. And so you really have to prioritize what's the most important. And that can be harder than you think. It's not an obvious thing, especially as the priorities keep changing depending on this feedback that you're getting. And a lot of it is just sort of going with your gut instinct, or your experience, what you've seen work in the past, what you haven't. But yeah, you can't, there's not going to be enough time to work on everything that you think is interesting. So you really do need to get really, really good at both prioritizing, like what order you're going to work on. And also, and this is a hard one for a lot of people, is failing fast, right? If you work on something and you think it's awesome, but you put it out there and people hate it, don't double down on a bad mistake, right? Like you don't want to say like, well, okay, but if we only did these 5 things, then maybe people really like it. And then you spend the time to do those 5 things and people still don't like it. And you're like, well, but they liked it a little bit more. So now I'm going to do these 5 things. And the next thing you know, that's sucking all your resources for something that like you kind of knew up front nobody was really that interested in, right? So that's something where you have to get good at recognizing when that's the case and say, I'm going to shelve that for now. Let me move on to these other things here that we think have maybe some more potential to try out.
A lot of strategic decisions.
Yeah. So that's an example. Also just where to, allocate your money. That's of course an important one too, right? There's certain things where, if you're experienced in the space, you can figure out how do you get better deals on things, how can you get free credits from, Amazon or Google or, whatever companies, right? But then at some point, there's certain things you just have to pay for, and you can say that you're never going to have as much money as you wish you did to pay for all these things. You have to kind of decide where are the things that are the most important. Like if we don't buy this thing, we don't have a product, versus, well, if we don't buy this thing, we have to build it ourselves and maintain it ourselves, and that's going to take more time, but it's not going to take half of our existing budget, right? So, you have a lot of those things you have to think through as well.
I think I've learned a lot today, so thank you, Jake.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.